今天是2月1号，我们又来到了火神山医院。由于交通管制啊，所以我们要走进去。上次来呢是昨天，也就是1月31号的下午。那么随着这个交付时间的临近啊，我们也要看一看，现在这个工程进展到什么程度了。我们看到有些医疗器械已经开始准备入场了。那么据我们了解呢，在昨天晚上，这个火神山医院已经全面通电了。这是我们昨天下午进行报道时候所站的台子。我们看现在它已经被这个电力设备啊所占据了。压路机，我们上次看到压路机呢还是在厂平的时候。那么如今压路机再次出现呢，也说明工程呢正在接近尾声，因为这个道路的铺设呢，已经是开始进行了。昨天下午呢，这个地方工人们还在铺设这个地下的管线，但是现在我们看呢，这已经是一条比较明显的道路了。我1月29号和1月31号来过2次啊，当时这个路很难走的，几乎没法下脚。但是现在我们看，昨天就是在这个位置，我们当时拍摄的这个房子的这个骨架已经搭起来了，工人们正在铺设这个外立面。现在我们看，这个外立面基本已经成型了。好，我们现在已经进入了板房的内部。随着这个外部搭建完毕呢，那么内部装修也正在快马加鞭的加紧施工。我们从这个角度看的就很清楚了啊，这个成排的这种医院的主体部分，就是这些活动板房已经搭建完毕了。好，今天是2月2号，我们又来到了火神山医院建设工地的这个现场。现在，医院内部它这个房间里面是什么样子？让我们一起去看一看。好，我们看到现在病房里面已经装好了病床，一些医疗器械。这现在是通电了吗？里面电通了吗？
已经试了
啊？
已经试过了。
啊，试过了。
对，现在就是把东西接上去就可以了。
这是另外一个房间的情况，工人们也在抓紧的调试。我们刚刚了解呢，这个地方是火神山医院的一个医疗耗材的仓库，我们进去看一看。像咱们这耗材主要是哪些那个门类啊？这些
临床护理类的都是护理的一些输液类呀，然后加上一些注射类，还有防护类啊，比如说帽子啊、口罩啊、医生帽啊，这边后面都是那个，全都是。
On January 21st, when the World Health Organization started tracking the outbreak, there were 282 cases. The next day, 314. The next, 581. Then 846. Then 1,320. Then 2,014. And by the start of the week of January 26th, it was clear that this would not be a quick and painless virus. This would be one for the history books, and it was going to get a lot worse before it got any better. Drastic circumstances called for drastic action. It was clear, given the trends, that Wuhan's hospitals would soon be overwhelmed by patients, and in the case of highly infectious viruses like coronavirus, that makes a bad situation worse as infected individuals will try to recover at home, where the virus can more easily spread. Therefore, the decision was made on January 23rd to build a brand new facility capable of treating 1,000 patients at once, Shenzhen Hospital. It was announced that this would be done, fully constructed, by February 2nd, just 10 days later. China has experience with such a feat. In 2003, the country suffered an outbreak of severe acute respiratory syndrome, or SARS, which is also caused by a form of coronavirus. Much like with the novel coronavirus, hospitals were overwhelmed and many had to turn away patients. In response, the government decided to build a new hospital. Over 6 days, 7,000 construction workers brought the Xiaotongshan Hospital into reality, and it quickly began accepting patients and relieving the overstressed medical system. Once the outbreak settled down, the Xiaotongshan Hospital was hailed as a massive success by both the country itself and the World Health Organization. The statistics speak for themselves. Overall, SARS had a fatality rate of 9.6%. At the Xiaotongshan Hospital, just 1.2% of patients died and not a single staff member was infected. It's no wonder why China wanted to replicate this, and therefore Xiaotongshan was the model for the new coronavirus hospital, but this time would be different. The 2003 hospital began construction over 6 months after the beginning of the outbreak. The 2020 hospital started construction less than 2 months after the first case and just days after the seriousness of the outbreak became clear. There was far less time for planning and design. The orders came, and then it was immediately time to start. Step 1 was finding a place to put the hospital. The location selected was previously just an open field about 14 miles or 22 kilometers from central Wuhan. This kept it away from the dense urban core, where further transmission might be easier, but the field in question was also right off a large pre-existing road which made access easy. That road was quickly shut down and turned into, essentially, a parking lot and staging area for the project. The contract for this project was given to China Construction Third Engineering Bureau Company, a subsidiary of the state-owned China State Construction Engineering Corporation. By revenue, this is the world's largest construction company, and it has experience in enormous projects like Beijing's new airport, Egypt's new capital city, and Tesla's Shanghai Gigafactory. If anyone was going to pull this off, it was them. To begin construction in earnest, they first needed to prepare the selected site. That involved, first, cutting down all the trees and shrubbery and then perfectly leveling the ground. Out of the 10-day construction timeline, this took longer than one might think, about 48 hours. This was due in part to the fact that the project was significantly understaffed in its first few days as they scrambled to find workers, especially as its start coincided with Chinese New Year's. Once the land was leveled, though, they moved on to constructing the building foundations by Sunday, January 26th. For this, they used a layered system. On the bottom, an 8-inch or 20-centimeter layer of sand was placed, then what's referred to as a geotextile layer, a form of fabric, then a layer of waterproof plastic, then another geotextile layer, then another layer of sand. On that, they then poured concrete, which dried over a few days. But then came the truly impressive element, constructing the buildings themselves in a matter of days. What made this possible was the use of prefabricated elements. Modular construction such as this has been on the rise recently. It's now a well-established technique for the construction of buildings large and small. The idea is, simply, that somewhere off-site a number of identical building elements are built. Then, they're shipped to the construction site and put together. This has plenty of advantages. First and foremost, the use of identical elements built in a factory system to construct a larger building lowers costs through economies of scale. Then, when you actually get to putting the building together, on-site construction time is significantly less, which once again lowers cost. In this case, though, cost was not the primary concern. Speed was, and modular construction is the fastest way to build. Most of the site used a type of prefabricated modular construction common with temporary buildings. While it's not clear which company produced the prefabricated components, it is clear that they existed before the project started. The first building elements started coming together on Monday, January 27th, just 4 days after the project broke ground. They began by building the skeleton of the modular units. Each of these units was about the shape and size of a 20-foot shipping container, and this skeleton form included just the floor, ceiling, and structural supports at each corner. Throughout this all, separate teams, out of the thousands of workers there, started to hook the site up to utilities like sewage, water, electricity, and internet. Much of this just involved bringing in the state-owned companies responsible for these, but for internet and the subsequent building out of an IT system, private companies like Huawei and Lenovo got involved. This was, no doubt, partially because the construction of this hospital drew considerable public attention in China. It came to represent the physical manifestation of the country's response to the crisis and also of China's engineering might. The construction process itself was streamed by state-owned broadcasting companies, and up to 18 million concurrent viewers watched the process. Nearly every major broadcaster in China reported from the site, publishing footage like what you're seeing now, although very few Western broadcasters were there. This is part of the reason limited detailed information and footage of the construction exists outside of China's state-owned broadcasters, where the government can manage the story and what gets out. It was, no doubt, viewed as an opportunity by the Chinese government in a time when it faced intense criticism for its initial response to the outbreak. But of course, to gain that praise, the project needed to be successful. On Tuesday, January 28th, significant portions of the first building were completed, while the rest of the complex's foundations were finishing up. Over the 29th and 30th, more of the overall structure came to be as the walls were installed on and in the skeletons of buildings, and work then began on turning these empty buildings into a hospital. Each patient room was outfitted with 2 beds, some medical equipment, and a bathroom. Considering the hospital is built with quarantine in mind, there are some unique aspects to the design of these rooms. For one, the ventilation system is built to keep negative pressure in all quarantine areas so that air will go out through an exhaust system rather than out under the door into the rest of the hospital. While at the time of writing, it's not entirely known to what extent this coronavirus can spread through airborne transmission, a ventilation system like this is standard practice for any quarantine ward. In addition to individual patient rooms, separate areas were designed for patient processing, diagnostic tools like CT scanners were installed, and other crucial aspects like offices, break rooms, and canteens were built in. Over the 31st of January and 1st and 2nd of February, the final areas of the complex were built up, the interior installation was wrapped up, and all the systems were tested to assure that the hospital was ready to bring in patients. Meanwhile, 8 People's Liberation Army transport planes landed at Wuhan Airport carrying the military medical staff who would staff the hospital. They moved into the facility throughout the same day, February 2nd, then throughout the night, workers put the finishing touches onto the hundreds of rooms. Then, the next morning, the moment that 10 days prior seemed impossible arrived. The first patients, transferred from other facilities, were wheeled into Huashunshan Hospital and thus marked the beginning of its operations. They started with just a few dozen patients, but in a matter of days, this ballooned to hundreds. Huashunshan Hospital was only the start of China's plan to ramp up the number of available beds in Wuhan. Just 3 days after Huashunshan's
We plan to use robots in many departments of the hospital. For example, in the pharmacy department, for the kitchen and laundry department.
ช่วยได้เยอะไหมช่วยได้เยอะก็คือในช่วยเรื่องช่วยพยาบาลเดินนะคะก็คือพยาบาลก็จะหรือเจ้าหน้าที่เนี่ยที่ต้องเดินส่งเอกสารเนี่ยในเรื่องสุขภาพนะคะก็คือเราเดินน้อยลงแล้วก็ปวดขาน้อยลงนะคะขอพูดค่ะ